Okay, this is a basic overview of the rules of play for the Sinking Throne board game. The basics will begin with each level being read, Each level will begin by reading the intro script and players will place their pieces on the red cross squares. Each turn begins with a player round in which players will make moves, then perform actions and order the player card numbers. Players are allotted movement points and action points at the beginning of each round. Each player has a default of 4, with a +2 added if they start their round on a road. Then they get 1 action to do with whatever they please after or before they move. When all players have completed their moves and actions, it becomes the enemy's turn if they are present and alerted to you, or if playing with an optional Demon Master. Once the enemy turn finishes, the next player round begins. Each player character receives a card at the beginning of the game. This acts as an inventory and displays character information, stats, and achievement. Each character's card displays health, defense, and damage, and a skill check if applicable. They also act as a place to store characters' inventory. Each player may hold 6 items in addition to 2 weapons and 1 armor set at a time. If they are awarded an extra armor set or weapon above their maximum or item, they must immediately trade that off as soon as their next turn begins, at risk of losing the item. The way movement will work is at the beginning of every round, player characters are allotted movement points and that they may use to move to any adjacent tile orthogonally. That means up, down, left, or right. Players may move diagonally on roads only. Players cannot pass through other players, but they can also cannot pass through, players can pass through other players, but they cannot pass through non-player characters or enemies. On a road or path, players may move an additional 2 tiles added to the base movement only. This is not applicable to additional movement gained from a dice roll. Some enemies also have abilities that may affect movement in various ways, such as pushing players away or to the side, keeping a player from moving past them, or forcing a player to use a specific move or action upon their turn. Die rolls are organized in a critical fail to a critical success rate. That means if you roll your dice and receive a 1, you completely fail that roll and you are awarded nothing. However, if you roll a 6, you are awarded double the output of the original roll. I.e., if you're attacking, you deal double damage. If you're cooking fish, you cook double the amount of fish. Or if you're refining ore, you refine twice as many items. Now, each roll... Okay, so... critical rolling either one of these numbers and coming. Sometimes the players will be required to pass a skill check to proceed. Then the roll required to pass will be noted on the respective card. Now, the list of actions that are available to players are fairly simple. Each player begins the turn with 1 action point, which they can use at any point in time, either before or after their movement points. And they may be used in a variety of ways based on the scenario, and certain cards or attributes may affect AP. Actions are available each turn are as follows. You may move again. You roll a die. If you roll a 1, you do not get any extra movement. Roll a 2 through 5, you get 4 extra movement, and roll a 6, you gain 8. You may attack. This uses the usual D6 roll to determine damage output. You may interact. Certain environmental cues, i.e. question marks and exclamation points, are located on the map. These will result in either a script being read or items being awarded, or some other change to the environment is made based off of what the cue card for that particular interaction states. Speech is basically just allows players in adjacent squares to trade equipment or items, which means to trade an item requires the use of your action point for that turn. Skill checks will work very similarly to most D&D games. Pretty much every refining or gathering action requires a skill check before its output may be determined. This is everything from cutting logs from trees to fishing fish from the water, or mining and refining ore into weapons and armor. To gather from an environmental cue, you must be adjacent to that square and then perform a D6 roll to determine resources gained. 1 fails, 2 through 5 provides a single resource, and 6 provides 2. Wood can be cut from trees, fish can be fished from water, ores can be mined from rocks, only with a pickaxe icon in the upper left of that tile, and some enemies drop food, armor, and various other items. All other skill checks will be noted on their respective card. Food works very simply. However, if it's gathered from the environment or certain enemies, they will only drop raw food, which must first be cooked at a camp tile. Camp tiles are indicated by a piece of meat within a flame. This indicates that you can cook, refine, and craft resources into more useful items and gear here. Now, to cook food, it performs a skill check. You must roll a die. You must roll the die. Rolling a 1 fails. It uses the log, but does not use your raw material. So if you fail the roll, you must only regather a log to return back to the camp and be able to do it again. Or you must have an extra log in your inventory. If you roll a 6, you can cook an extra fish on the same log, provided you have a second fish. Refining and preparing resources that are not food at camps involves mining ore, and then having the proper amount of ore to smelt that into a weapon or armor. A weapon requires 1 ore, and armor requires 2 ore. However, you must also have a log for each individual action you wish to perform of refining. So 1 log is required for any refining actions. If you wish to smelt an armor, you must have 2 ore and 1 log. If you wish to smelt a weapon, you must have 1 ore and 1 log. However, if you roll a 6 on the skill check, should you have enough ore, you can smelt a second item of any type on the same log. And then the combat rules, they work on the same critical success to critical fail system. However, they require a little bit of calculation. When attacking, characters roll a d6 to determine whether their attack success is a success, a failure, or a critical success. To determine damage dealt, players must add the base damage on their character card to any damage modifiers they have, i.e. weapons, and then subtract the defense of the defending unit. Defense is noted on the character card, both of players and enemies. Critical failures occur whenever a 1 is rolled and will completely fail the roll, dealing 0 damage. When a 2 to 5 is rolled, calculate your hit as normal, i.e. add your damage modifier on your player card to any weapon modifiers you may have for that attack. Then only when a critical success, a 6, is rolled, you will double the total damage output for your attack. That means you will add up all of your damage modifiers. So in the case of a normal player attack, a damage of 4 will become a damage of 8, plus the sword's damage of 1, which would then become a damage of 2, creates a total damage of 10. Enemies and players are defeated once their HP reaches 0, however it has different results. Players will become incapacitated, which means they cannot make another move or use any of their points, movement, or action until another player acquires an adjacent square to them and then uses a food item on them to revive them. The amount of health restored is dependent on the food item being used. Player combat consists of melee and ranged defenses. Weapon cards determine range and determine damage and range of the attack, while melee abilities are only able to strike adjacent tiles. Range attacks can hit from a distance determined by the weapon card. When a player's HP reaches 0, they'll become incapacitated and must be revived by food from another player. If every player in the party becomes incapacitated, then they have failed the level and must restart. When an enemy's HP reaches 0, it's removed from the board, and some enemy cards will trigger a script at this point. All enemies will attempt to counterattack whenever a player melee attacks them. This roll occurs directly after the player's attack, assuming the enemy was not vanquished. Enemies perform a die roll according to their character card criteria. Some enemies have special attacks based off of what die they roll. And then Zone of Control is an area around every enemy that is hostile to players. It's a 1-tile radius surrounding the unit. In this zone, players may only attack or move. They may not use any other actions. However, they may not move again on their action. If the player begins the turn within a zone of control, movement is reduced to 2 spaces, and the player may not move again after moving if they remain inside that zone of control. And that's a basic overview of the rules. The player cards function as a place to keep track of your inventory, items, and health. Whenever a player takes damage, they'll take the markers included. We're using pennies, nickels, and dimes currently to represent their numerical value. Pennies were 1, dimes are 10, nickels are 5. Therefore, having this on my player card would indicate that I've taken a total of 12 damage. which means I would only have 8 health points left. This is how we would track it for both players and monsters. As you can see over here, this bear would have only 1 health left, as it has a total of 14 cents and an actual health of only 15. That would leave it with 1 health. The intro script reads, you begin your journey towards the waterfall cave to investigate while the fall's source has stopped flowing. You should prepare for the journey ahead by gathering resources and equipment. You need to smith at least 1 weapon and 1 armor set, and cook at least 1 food before the party may progress. But you may explore the area at your will before continuing. Alright, we're about to begin our first playthrough. I'm player 1, so I'll be going first. Each player begins by taking their base movement or by making an action, depending on what the situation is. I'm going to be moving first. 1, 2, 4, 5, 6. I can move 6 spaces because I began on a road. And now I'm going to roll my die for extra movement. I rolled a 5, so I can move another 4 spaces. Now, extra movement does not get the bonus 2 moves from starting on a road. You can only move 4 or 8 should you roll a 6. Dalton.
Okay, I'm also going to begin my turn now. I'm going to move 6 spaces down the road. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. And I'm going to take my dice roll to see if I can move again. I got a 5, so I can also take a second movement. 1.
Another note is you're only allowed to move diagonally on a road, which is denoted by the path through the grass. Alright, now it's my turn again. I'm going to move my 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now I'm going to roll die for extra movement. 5 again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 4. Alright.
Okay. I'm starting my turn. 6, and I'm next to the resource rock here that has ore, so I'm rolling to see if I can collect some resources. And I got a 2, so I get 1 ore.
Resource rocks are denoted by the small pickaxe symbol in the top left, as just shown. And Dalton succeeded in his roll, so he's awarded 1 ore, which he can carry. This is the first of 6 items that he can carry in his inventory. That is separate from swords and armor. You can carry 2 swords or 2 weapons and 1 armor outside of your 6 base items. All right, and now I'm going to continue my movement. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now I'm going to roll again. It's the wrong space. There we go. Now I'm going to roll again. I rolled a 4, so I get my 4 extra movement. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, that's the end of my turn.
Okay, I'm going to try and collect more resources from this rock because I need armor and a weapon. So I'm rolling to gather the resource, and I got a 6, so I get 2 ores. Here's the 6. I get 2 ores instead of 1.
Rolling a 6 will always grant a double output for gathering and refining actions. We'll go over refining later.
Now I'm going to use my movement, which is starting on a road, so 6 spaces.
Prototype pieces are sticky. Alright, and since I was on this square next to the water on my last turn, I'm going to gather a food. So I'm rolling for skill check. I rolled a 4, so I get 1 raw food from the water. 1 raw food. Alright. And then I get to take my movement. 1, 2, 3, 4. And now I don't get my bonus movement because my turn did not start on the road. It started on the beach.
Okay, so starting my movement turn. 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to try and harvest the resource from this tree.
You could harvest resources from any adjacent square. It does not have to be orthogonally next to you.
5, so I do get 1 log.
Alright, and now it is my turn again. I'm going to take my 6 movement. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And now I'm going to roll again for movement. I rolled a 2, so I just barely succeeded in getting my 4 extra movement. 1, 2, 3, 4. Alright, that's the end of my turn.
Okay. And I'm going to try and get 1 more log before I try and smelt some of these ore into weaponry and armor. Oh, but I
And he
failed because I got a 1.
Alright. And you don't have to take your movement each turn. It is optional. And Dalton chose not to move that turn. Now I'm going to move into the woods here. And I'm going to try and harvest from a tree now. So roll for skill check. And I rolled a 3. So I get 1 log. Alright.
Okay, I'm also going to try and get this log since I failed last time.
And he rolled a 2, so he succeeded.
So we get a log. And is it into my turn?
And now it's my turn again. I'm going to take my movements and I'm going to go back to the camp nearby. Except I'm 1 space away, so I have to roll for extra movement. And I rolled a 1, so I don't go anywhere.
Okay, so now I'm going to try and smelt this ore into a sword. So I'm using this campfire here as a smelting pit. I rolled a 2, so I succeeded. So now I can trade in my logs and ore for a sword.
And now the way refining works is that to create a sword, you need 1 log and 1 ore, and to create armor, you need 1 log and 2 ore. If you fail the roll, you will always lose your log, but you won't lose your ore. If you succeed the roll, you can smelt 1 item. If you succeed with a 6, you can smelt 2, provided you have enough ore to do so. Alright, now that it's my turn, I'm going to move back close to the camp, and I'm going to roll to cook my fish. And I rolled a 6. However, I only have 1 raw food. If I had a second, I could have cooked both of them on the same log, but instead I can only cook the 1.
Okay, so now it's my turn. I'm going to try and smelt these 2 ore into some armor now. Got a 5.
5. So
that was
succeeded.
successful. So now my character is outfitted with armor and a sword.
So I will begin my turn by initiating an attack. I roll for attack. I rolled a 2, therefore I take my base damage modifier on my player card and add it to any other damage modifiers I might have. I don't have any weapons, so I only get my base 4. And since I rolled a 2 and succeeded, I will subtract that directly from the bear's defense rating, and then whatever is left over will be subtracted from the bear's health. Now in this case, I will have dealt 2 damage to the bear. So to indicate that, I'll take 2 damage tokens, i.e. pennies, today, and we'll place them over the bear to indicate that he has taken that damage. Immediately after attacking, the enemy will always attack back at the player who just landed an attack, unless you're playing with a DM. So anyway, this is a roll for the bear's attack. The bear rolled a 5. Now the bear has a 2 damage modifier, so since he rolled a 5 and he deals 2 damage, and I have 1 armor, I subtract that, therefore the bear dealt 1 damage back to me, and I will place the damage marker on my player card as so.
I'm going to attack the bear. I rolled a 6, which means I get double damage because it's a critical strike.
So to calculate Dalton's damage, he'll add his sword damage to his player character damage, creating 5, but because he rolled a 6, he deals 10, doubling his original score. However, that's still subtracted from the bear's defense, so Dalton dealt 8 damage.